Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Golden Age Stories stream here. We are doing a Crossing Darkness kind of episode right now, where we're going to be going over character creation for a game module and city book that I'm going to be creating called Madison Under Siege, Mage. And so this is going to be a game that's going to focus on Mage the Ascension. We're going to be using Mage the Ascension 20th Anniversary rule set for our character creation. I will also be publishing an accompanying book that will have a detailed module as well as city setting for Madison, Wisconsin. And so this is kind of a little bit of a prequel of what we're going to be doing. And my plan is to try and we're going to be creating a module for this. So we're going to create the characters here, and then we're going to, in a week or so, we're going to be playing the actual module for this, which will be a 3 hour module, give or take. And we will kind of play it through with these characters. These characters will be immortalized as the pre-made characters for that module. However, the module will allow for you to play different kind of characters. You don't have to play any of the pre-mades. It's just there for you if you need them. And then you'll have this nice little podcast, Twitch, YouTube episode that we have here for you to kind of see how character creation is for that, or in general, if you just want to learn what Mage the Ascension character creation is like. We're going to be going through, we're starting on page 254 of the 20th anniversary Mage book, Mage the Ascension, and that puts you at part one, character, creating your character. So step one is going to be concept and identity. So what I'm going to do is kind of go through everybody here and have you kind of explain what your character is and what your base concept for your character is here. So starting with, I'm just going to use your on-screen names here at this time until we get your characters a little bit more fleshed out here. Michael, what is your
What?
that's the thing on your thing right here, right underneath your
Yeah.
picture.
Uh, no, my name is Rory.
It says
You didn't
Michael.
change. My character's name is Peyroux St. from New Orleans.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, because we haven't you haven't added the thing at the bottom to change our names on the screen.
Well, how do I do that?
I don't remember. Anyway, the concept of my character is I am a voodoo punk. So I'm a white kid that grew up in the New Orleans area. Started to learn magic, kind of techno magic, but then was thrust into the world of voodoo. And so I've had a voodoo mentor for a few years, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Voodoo punk.
Awesome. Cool. And Ricky.
I am playing a guy, Doctor. Just had a name change, Doctor Martin Kindly. Um, Outwardly awkward, meek, but secretly kind of manipulative, intelligent slime ball type guy. Uh, he believes he is a dispenser of karma and needs to basically immortalize himself so that he can continue his work eternal. Uh, and he's kind of like that crazed paladin type thing, I think it's turning into.
Nice. Solid.
And that's all taking place as a euthanatos.
Sweet. Solid. And Fincross.
Hey, yeah, I am playing Vesu Kefrooz, not sure on the last name, who is going to be a Order of Hermes playing an oldish monk-esque character. Wears robes and carries a stick. I know very little about him in general. So that's pretty much all I got at this stage.
All right, and Amber.
I am playing Sandra-lynn Kindly. She is Celestial Choir. Uh, Still vague at this point, but she's out here to help the youth and to spread the word.
Awesome. All right. So, according to the book, one of the main things that you kind of want to answer for your characters is, who are you? Are you a cybernetic hard ass? Are you a desperate runaway, a corporate shark? So we've kind of got that base idea of who your main character is. There are some follow-up questions like, is it that you were is it that you were Oh, is that who you were when you were first awakened, or has the awakening made the person you are today? So like one of the big things is will be believe that will be touching base on that, but definitely is one thing here is that your awakening is going to be a traumatic event that happened to you. You know, they're not necessarily traumatic, but like a very important moment in your life where something, where magic started really coming out for you. Usually it's like a major event that kind of happens. So each one of you should have like an idea of what your awakening is. So I'm just going to kind of open this up here because I don't expect all of you to have an awakening. But if there is anybody that has an awakening, do you want to give us like just a base idea of what your awakening would be like? And it can be really rough just off the top of your head here as well if you've got some kind of base idea. But usually it involves some kind of spectacular magical event. You might be able to do, I've always had it that you can, in awakenings, you can kind of go above what your power level is for that short amount of time, and it kind of allows you to see that there's more possibilities than what you actually have, but you can also just limit it to other crazy shit happening to you from somebody else or something like that. But yeah, so I'll open up the floor here. Does anybody have like an idea of what you want your awakening to be?
If nobody else has one, I got maybe just something off the top of my head.
Awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see. So my character is still young. I'm putting him about 21. So he's a voodoo punk, but he started as a punk, right? So I'm going to say that around the age of 16, because this is still the 90s in the world of darkness. So that would have been 5 years ago, 94, 95. Yeah. So he got into hacking, hackers style hacking. And his soul was kidnapped by some sort of net spirit, weaver spirit. And the voodoo priest who, I don't know, lived next door? Let's go with that. Was like, oh, there's a disturbance. Better call on the Loa to figure out what's going on. And he came and saved me. And he's like, yeah, you work for me now. That's what I got.
Nice. Yeah. So you had like this, crazy event that kind of happens to you. You saw like the possibilities of magic, and then also, found a mentor, which is pretty huge in an awakening. And that happens a lot. You awaken, some crazy thing happens, and then, a mentor usually, like you said, oh, there's a disturbance in the force. What's going on here? And you go check out your neighbor's house, and it's filled with dead bodies, and you got one scared fucking teenage kid running around. It's as a werewolf is chasing him down. But yeah, so exactly, that's perfect. So if nobody else, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I do, yeah. Um, and yeah, tell me if I'm on the right track here, I guess. So basically, this guy's mother died at a young age. He was left with a single father who was kind of a deadbeat, spent most of his time gambling, and dragged the kid around with him to these places, and started kind of realizing that the kid was kind of like a good luck charm. Um, and he was basically showing like early signs of out of his desperation for his dad to win. Sometimes the dice games and stuff were getting swayed a little bit with his kind of early powers before he was aware. But around like high school age, he just kind of got sick of just how kind of dark everything was and living that life under his dad. And he just kind of gave up and it stopped helping the games. His dad got into like really deep debt really quick. And he basically like almost got killed in front of the kid at one of the places until the kid just kind of like snapped and forces pushed or not forces matter just kind of like shoved this thing like this desk across into the guys and like knocked him off the dad and like freaked out. So then he realized he had something weird but he couldn't figure it out. He kind of wandered through stuff and actually like used the little part he had realized to kind of like get himself a scholarship on the bowling team, which got him to a good university where he tried to study some of this and almost got ridiculed to the point that he dropped out. But then this professor showed up out of nowhere who became the mentor, that was part of this order and kind of introduced him to the whole world and put him through all the rites necessary and all that over the years to get him fully into one of the youth Thanatos.
That's perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like that little like, you did magic to like save your father. You've been doing a little bit of like, entropy magic here and there, and then all of a sudden, you get the like big event of magic where, you do something that you weren't able to immediately replicate afterwards, but you had an idea of like, okay, I'm bending the universe to my will.
Yeah,
And not necessarily even
and
bending it to my will, as I've found some magic secrets.
and it's basically like caused this kind of like double drive of I resent my father for kind of like what I think is bringing this out in me, but at the same and like I wish I think about how if I could have done something like that, my mother hadn't died, would my life have been different type thing, but fell in with the order and now it's more about kind of evening things out now that I'm so aware of death and all that.
Awesome. Yeah, so and I like how that kind of ties into you get a good example of how the awakening greatly changed your life. That your character, you know, when he awakened was, it altered his entire life trajectory and, had a time period where he was an orphan and then got picked up by a tradition mage and was taught the traditional forms of magic to control it properly. That's awesome. That works exactly perfect. Anybody else have a awakening that you'd like to share? We can also make alterations. This isn't set in stone. It's it's playtime.
Gotcha. I don't have one yet, but I'm not authorized to change character sheets in here on Roll20. I don't think, because like I'm clicking on
I
stuff.
think it's just that one character sheet because I had the same issue on that one. I think Josh, you have to set the edit to all on that one.
Also, I can't change my avatar.
We are good there now. Oh, and let's see. So we're using Roll20 here. Added the characters into the character sheet section here. So now you should have access to your character sheet. And I believe once you have access to your character sheet, you'll be able to switch your picture over to that. Being a thing where I can change it so that it picks your character. Or is that when I assign it? So edit. Anyways, it's not truly editable at this point. So as long as you have the ability to edit that character, looks like you do, we are good.
I got, well, I don't know if you'll like it, but I have an idea.
Oh, go ahead.
This is going back to Awakenings. So I'm going for boring. Like, he grew up in an order household and just was trying to do stuff, and like eventually, like maybe 16, maybe 18 was the first time he had a small ritual actually work, and then he kept studying and kept doing stuff and do these like real small mundane, borderline mundane rituals, and then he just kind of, I'm not even sure where I am right now. But yeah, just it went fine. It went
Yeah,
fine.
that's a good example of a, very different than what a lot of people think of when they're like, okay, I'm gonna have to make an awakened character. It's like, okay, I'm the only one that's awakened. I had nobody in my family. I don't know anybody else. I have to abandon my life and become something new. But you're doing the my family has been part of, traditional magic for a long time. Like regardless of whether you awaken or not, your family, probably lets everybody in on the secret, involves everybody in their magical acts as acolytes, and or so, and then you have like an experience that happens that even sometimes is just like, because you have so much magic around you all the time, awakening doesn't need to be this crazy traumatic event that kind of happens to you. You just slowly, there is probably a specific time that you probably were able to, had some, usually there is still like kind of an event that will but it doesn't need to be like a spectacle or, kind of super crazy. It's just like you said, eventually, or at one point after, studying and working and understanding rituals, you were like, hey, I've created my, own ritual and bent it to my will type stuff, instead of doing, because the Order of Hermes does, like, a lot of their magic works for anybody, if you just do the symbols right. It's a science that they follow to a certain degree.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out a way. Like, it's always a real like high emotion event. Like, emotions are always high, and that's what triggers the magic. And I was trying to figure out a way to have it not be emotion triggered. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I came up with. Where it just kind of happens slowly, and like you play basketball, you might make 1 out of 10 threes, and then after get out a, you do a lot of practicing, a lot of training, and then all of a sudden now maybe you're 6 for 10. You get real good, you might get like 9 for 10. But it's just slow practicing and building, and that's how he's done his magic this whole time.
All right. Yeah, no, definitely. Sorry, got distracted there for a minute. But I am back now. All right. So, anybody else have any awakening thing that you want to go over? Actually, I think that is all of us but Amber. Oh, that's cool. We'll get back to you on your awakening at a different time, and we can kind of move on at this time. But you got some good examples here of what awakenings could be like, and we can also change that stuff up. So, all right. So next is concept. Oh, sorry. The last question that is the most important question of all. what do you want? Is there a specific thing that your character is trying to achieve? And I highly suggest this to be your long-term goal, not your I'm trying to get a cheeseburger. Um, so, does anybody have a long-term goal for your character?
Awaken the sleepers. I mean, we're talking crazy, crazy wide, like whole life goal
I mean, it's,
to
yeah, like your
break out of.
motivation, the thing that drives you to get out of bed every day.
I'm trying to discover a way to beat death without death noticing, without getting in, like, you know, gaining a bunch of jour and going down that whole path, because I believe that I am too vital, too vital to the dispensing of karma for there to be time wasted with me spending times reincarnating. If I achieve my dharma and beat death, then am allowed to exist outside of the wheel in my mind.
That's heavy.
That's solid.
Yeah.
Oh, mine is going to be a long-term project. I have to do a lot of reading on the paradigm.
Okay, yep, we can go ahead and kind of move on, but that's definitely like a question that I would highly suggest you get answered at some point before we play. That's it's a really important kind of motivator on like why your character does everything, and is one of those things when you're doing like dungeon crawls and other kind of like Dungeons and Dragons. Why you do it doesn't necessarily matter as much as getting there and just having fun. Um, with like a driving game of role playing, like the Mage the Ascension games, why you're doing things is probably way more important than what you're doing, actually. All right, so we'll move on to concept. So this we've kind of already gone over, so I don't think we need to delve in deep onto that. But you know, they give some like examples. Are you the typical Wall Street asshole? You know, do you just kind of reading over a couple of things here, but
I thought they were going to have drop-down boxes for nature and demeanor, in essence.
so I believe there is a concept section, right? Is it concept?
Oh, are we doing concept?
Yep, we're on concept.
Oh,
So this
voodoo
is
punk.
yeah, so this is your, you know, when you fill that out, you're gonna want to put in the essence of what your character is. Like you said, voodoo punk, um, and so I guess for Fincross, for your character, is it more of a focus on like a bookworm, like kind of like you know, just studies a lot in order to get a lot of his magics kind of stuff. So that would be something like, you know, are you like a librarian or something similar in that kind of fashion in concept, or are you like still like a college kid? Or I think you said you were going to be in like your 30s.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think concept is the physical embodiment of walk softly but carry a big stick as a forces monk, a forces based monk. So reserved, tranquil, but you know, more power to you if he actually gets angry.
Okay, nice. All right. So, anybody else? So Ricky, what would you think if you had to distill your concept down into like a couple words?
So far I came up with a deceptive fanatic paladin.
So what do you do in the real world? What's your fake
But
idea?
that's the thing is his kind of cover because he still tries to live like the normal life because that's a lot of his focus is on appearing as normal as possible. Like he almost overdoes it, and that's kind of the part that I'm trying to capture in it that I can't come up with because my idea is that he kind of wanders so that he doesn't ever pick up too much attention, and he justifies it by basically being a collector and researcher of old, classic like archaic books and tomes and that kind of thing. Like he's always hunting for that because he is secretly looking for more tips on fighting death, but he kind of covers it with his religious history uh, doctorate.
I think I found the thing that I'm looking for to as examples of how to distill it down for you is sample concepts. So on page 250, there are the sample concepts towards the bottom on the left-hand side. There's like activist, artist, athlete, caretaker, criminal.
Okay.
So they want you to kind of like super distill it down. And these are all just samples. You can definitely go way outside of what they've got here, but try and think of like what's that one word that distills who your character is. Is he a warrior, a bookworm, an intellectual?
Probably intellectual then.
Yep, that would make yep. So, and you can, customize that, and it sounds like you
Yeah.
already have customized that quite a bit. But I would say almost like instead of paladin, I would say intellectual. So
Yeah,
deceptive,
deceptive,
fanatic,
fanatic,
intellectual.
intellectual.
Yep. Awesome. And Amber, do you have an idea of what you think your concept would be?
If we're going by the list on 250, I think it's like a mixture of mystic and caretaker.
Okay, you could just put mystic caretaker. They kind of do like because I mean there's no mechanics behind this. That's one of the nice things about the concept here is that the concept doesn't do anything other than just give you a really quick idea of that's who I am.
Okay.
Maybe you play 20 different games and you have to be reminded by one word what your concept is. But it also helps just other people are seeing inside the book you had a character listed out. Anyways, yeah, that's great. Oh,
No, seeing the list, it's Guardian.
Guardian. Okay, yep, that would make sense. Yep. All right, so the next one that we have is the mage has some sort of affiliation with one of the Council of Nine, or the Technocracy, or the Desperates, Desperates.
Would
Anyways,
we all be
Desperate.
traditions there?
what's that?
Would we all be traditions there?
So in this game, for this game, we are going to be restricting you to just the traditions or a craft that's associated with the traditions. In 1999, they can still be an independent craft, but they would be somebody in Madison that still works with the Council of Nine that's in Madison because Madison has its own, it still is subservient to the Council of Nine of the world, but they have their own council in Madison, and there's enough mages and power inside of Madison for them to have their own kind of mage society. That's their, uh, you know, haven away from the technocracy, basically. Um, so I would say that you can play any one of those. Um, Also, when you pick your affiliation, you're also kind of picking what sphere that's going to be your primary. Um, I kind of go even more than what Mage 20 does, and I'm kind of saying that you can pick whatever you want for your affiliation sphere, as long as it makes sense. And if it is different than the normal affiliate sphere, then you would want it to have a story to it or a reason behind it. You're just gonna have to give me like a paragraph of an answer as to why it's not that, but you're still raised in the rest of it. Still mends or meshes with the rest of the traditional magic that is the verbena or whatever. But for this game purposes, unless you're playing a hollow one, which I am allowing hollow ones, I guess I would allow for orphans as well if you wanted to play an orphan. You're trained in traditional magic, so I want your character to, when they're doing magic, to try and follow suit with that tradition's paradigm and concepts, as much as is fun. So I believe that most of you have already picked out your affiliation, so I'm just going to go through and see if any of you have not, but I believe we all have, but we'll go through and make sure everybody did. So starting with Martin. St. Martin.
Peyroux St.
True.
Yeah, so the thing that you found earlier for me, which is the Bata'a, which is basically the voodoo craft in Mage the Ascension. So I'm going to be associated with that, but in terms of the module, I will be representing the verbena in terms of the big traditions, because I'm very, very witchy.
Yeah, it sounds like that they would probably join up with or have like a representative. If you lived there, then when you're doing stuff, you would probably be using the verbena as your voice of representation. Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and then my main sphere is going to be spirit.
Okay.
Rather than life, which is the verbena sphere.
And Ricky.
We're going for affiliation.
Yes. Yep.
Youth Thanatos.
Awesome. And you're going to use entropy as your primary sphere, I'm guessing, as well. Awesome. And how do you say your character's name? Vesus?
Vesu.
Vesu.
Although you can call me
Vesu.
Vest for short.
Oh, and Ricky's character's name was Martin. So yeah. Dr. Martin Kindly?
Yes, it is.
Wait, we have two Kindlys?
Oh shit!
Oh my god. What?
Didn't
Hey,
even notice.
hey, it happens in the real world. Why not here?
That's hilarious.
Hi, I'm Dr. Martin Kindly. This is Sandra-lynn Kindly. No relation.
No,
No
really.
relation.
That's gonna be a thing throughout the entire. That's gonna be a quote inside of the book.
I literally made it up on the fly. Did not
Dude, I
read
didn't do
anybody's
that's so
name.
funny.
Great minds think alike. All right, so Vesu, what is your your affiliation, and are you doing any special things with it?
I'm not sure on, I guess, subgroups, but I will be affiliated with the Order of Hermes.
Okay, yep, and there is a bunch of different houses in the Order of Hermes, which they specialize in all different types of magic. I personally like House Miscellaneous or Miscellaneous.
Okay. And so this is, I put Order of Hermes in the affiliation, and then I put the house in sect. Is that?
So sect would be your tradition, or sorry, that you are the traditions. But if you wanted to, you could put it there if you really wanted to, and just put house because that you're a tradition mage. But you could also just put it in parentheses, next to that. Or you could just put the house name if you want instead of Order of Hermes, because if you're of that house, then of course you're Order of Hermes. Why wouldn't you know that? Duh.
I have some reading to do on the various Order of Hermes houses.
Yeah, and Madison is run by Host Miscellany or whatever, and they basically there is a bunch of different houses in Madison. The tradition, or the most powerful tradition in Madison, is the Order of Hermes. So you have lots of options. There's a bunch of different chantries that they have. They have a bunch of um, very, each house has their own chantry basically inside of Madison.
So reading this a little more, it looks like affiliation is traditions or technocracy or the disparates,
Oh,
and then sect is like which tradition you're in.
oh,
So it's like it's very broad.
so yeah, what Mike said as our correction on all of that. But same thing, basically, are you part of the traditions? Are you part of, and then what tradition are you a part of? The next big one that does matter is your essence. So this one does have a mechanical background to it, not a whole bunch of mechanics, and mechanics that can be more easily overlooked than a lot of the other mechanics inside of this game. But the essence is basically the core identity of your character's avatar. You have dynamic, or let's see here. I don't list it in this. Here. Let me go back quick. So yes, there's dynamic, static, primordial, and questing are the 4 different types of essences that you can be. So the dynamic ones are your avatar is more a passionate force of progress and change. Your avatar, which is your like soul, your reincarnation, the thing that gives you magic. There's a bunch of things you could try and explain but the basis of it is it's that which gives you magic. Does your magic come from passion and forces of progress and change? Does it come from grounded agent of secure stability? Does it have an elusive figure of primordial mystery? Or is it a wandering dreamer of new horizons? And a lot of the times your avatar can be seen as almost a separate entity than exactly you. It depends on how you all interpret it through your own paradigm. But to a certain degree, your avatar is like another part of you, or maybe even a completely separate entity from you, depending on what you believe. Traditionally, though, it is the thing that gives you magic. Kind of is seen as like a soul. So any questions on what your essence should be, and does anybody want to speak up about what they think their essence should be?
I think I'm going to go with dynamic just as a default.
I'll probably be going with questing.
I was drawn to primordial because of a different description than the one that you just read.
Oh, what was the one that you read? That's the very quick one. So
yeah, it was.
Here we go. So before light and order existed, primordial chaos was the essence of the universe. So this is page 267. Even now, the eternal enigma beckons to the human soul in the shape of ear and often sinister avatar forms, manifesting as shadows, half-heard cries. Yeah, so basically, your avatar comes from the dark stuff of the universe.
The reason I really liked it was Primordial Mage loves mystery. That's so there's something basic, original that drives to understand everything. Find a new mystery and solve it and move on to the next one. And that's the reason that I was.
I kind of feel like that's more questing. So whatever windmills beckons, you find questing mages preparing to tilt. Vagabonds, pilgrims, balance and the Trinity.
Questing seems to be kind of like the 3 in balance.
Yep. Whereas primordial mages curls up in the shadows, the questing mage straps them onto her back.
Questing is also the easiest one to explain for a game, at least.
Yeah, the
Like,
the questing one is probably one of the most, if you're doing a questing group, you're doing questing.
I'm kind of leaning towards this. It's challenging because I feel originally the character would have had a primordial essence. But then by the time the game starts, it probably would be questing, unless if it's not possible to change. But like, eventually he switched from I can't learn everything in books to I want, no, I can learn anything in books to I can't learn everything in books, and I need to get out there. And he's getting started a little later than others, but in terms of
I would say that's more of like creating balance as well. So that sounds like it would be questing the whole way, even if it, starts off a little bit stronger on one side, but it balances out in the end. I would say that fits more with questing all the way through. I mean, one of the big things I would say that I think the way that they're kind of getting a lot of it is used as primordial is where the bad guys, get a lot of their shit from. But then you have stuff like Dark Knight, and stuff like that where the darkness can be used for good. And so primordial is a shoehorned into being more of a darker, eviler kind of essence to your character. Whereas, questing is more about the, finding a balance between everything, but also it does seem to be a little bit more like inquisitive and stuff like that too. Oh.
Yeah, I get the impression that Dr. Kindly over here should be primordial.
I do see that I could see
Yeah,
Dr.
I
Kindly
can
as
see that.
being primordial.
Makes sense.
But I could also see your character just going in that. I could also see.
Questing kind of falls in with the kind of cover and the way that he kind of moves around, in a sense, though, because it's one
Yeah,
of those where he doesn't really stay put, and he kind of uses it to constantly track down new sources and new information and that kind of thing.
I never actually read pattern, and so I'm going with pattern. It's pretty much right on for how I'm building the character.
Oh,
I just
that
didn't
is
actually read it.
normally Order Hermes mages are pattern, and the reason being is that they follow an order to the universe of how magic should be. They basically, I mean, although the tradition mages are against technology for the most part, and the statement that technology is everything and that eventually technology can just usurp all forms of magic, um, they believe very much in still in a science, that there is a way to the universe and that they have figured out the hidden tricks of the universe more than just we are will benders and we bend the universe to our will, which is not what hardly any, or actually no tradition mage has that as their base foundation. Their base foundation is in something much deeper. Um, in their mind, they understand that that is what they're doing in the end, but that's in order to truthfully have that be your foundation as a mage, you have to have like an arcade.
Okay. Yeah, right here it says, despite broad connections between the four essences and the Ascension War factions, dynamic for marauders, pattern for technocrats, questing for the traditions, and primordial for the Nefandi, all four essences can be found in every faction, including the ones who want no part of the war.
Oh, that's
So
an
there's a strong
interesting
connection, but
I don't think I've ever
they're-
read that before. That's a good.
Yeah, Essence doesn't generally come up because it doesn't have much of a mechanical connection to the game, as far as I remember.
It mechanically it doesn't come up a whole bunch. I think there is some minor stuff that can come into that. But it mainly comes into role playing, where how do you role play the avatar if you interact with your avatar?
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
I have
most
never
often
done
the
that very much.
avatar and its essence reveal themselves as personality quirks, subtle nudges, dreams, hallucinations, deja vu, and feelings of something, someone being just right or totally wrong to the mage in question. A dynamic essence mage feels restless, driven, impassioned, and hyperactive. His pattern companion might be more settled, reliable, one of those good head on her shoulders types with a solid approach toward life. A questing vagabond rarely sticks around one place for long, and the enigmatic primordial soul gazes at her surroundings with eerie calm and an agenda no one else can fathom. So now I don't know if I should do primordial or questing.
We should try to include that in this game because I don't think I've ever had that where the avatar is kind of a separate character.
Yeah, I think that that's something that we can definitely dive into a lot more. I didn't want to do it in the Technogate game, but yeah, I always like the idea of having the avatar be something a little bit more than just, a personality quirk, which is what a lot of people kind of pass off your avatar as just being just a minor part of you that doesn't really, gives you your magic, but if you don't interact with it, but I like the idea of it being, like, the thing in your dreams that comes and talks to you. Like they say, the dark shadow creature that speaks to you and whispers.
I guess mine's either static or primordial. Not
Yeah,
sure yet.
I'm switching over to primordial after reading the breakdowns on page 267.
But yeah, I think we can go ahead and move on a little bit here. That's something we can kind of go back to and refocus on, because it will be a pretty big part of your character. But I think we can get a lot of that's we can get to the more mortal side of your character moving on here, and maybe that'll help you influence if you're still tied up on which one you want to do here. So next thing that we will be moving on to, we're on to page 255 now. We're doing nature and demeanor. So this does have a very specific mechanic to it. This is how you get your willpower back. Nature traditionally does not, or gives you, is what you get your willpower from. So that when you find, let's see, on page 250, they give you examples. You can work out with your GM a special one if you want, but there is a mechanic to it. So you want to make sure you have it detailed out how you get your willpower back. So nature of a benefactor is somebody that you've got the power to help, and so you do. Um, and then there's a specific mechanic behind that. So if we go over to, let's see here.
That is
Yeah, the whole
actually
list. It's
my
right there.
nature.
Yeah, so benefactor is on page 268 if you want to get the exact thing here. And it says for the mechanic behind this is regain willpower when you provide help that someone else desperately needs. The key here is that desperate part. Teaching Sunday school isn't meeting that level of need. If you use your arts to assist autistic kids, however, you're clearly you'll clearly be making a difference in their life. So pick out using, I would say for this game, we're going to use a traditional because I don't want to have to explain in the module what your archetype is here. And how you gain back willpower in the character. So pick one of the primaries here that we have: activist, benefactor, contrary, crusader, hacker, idealist, kid, innovator, loner, machine, mad scientist, marauder, monster, prophet, rogue, sensationalist, survivor, traditionalist, trickster, or a visionary. And then you all have corresponding ways of getting back willpower. Demeanor does not do anything other than cover up what your nature is. Now, mechanically, there's not a lot more that kind of goes into that, but there is. If you know somebody's nature, you're more easily able to manipulate them. So usually people use demeanor in order to cover up their true self. Now, there are a lot of people also who just don't care, and their nature and demeanor are the same thing. If I think that comes from just making sure you understand that a lot of people do that, where they have who their true self is, and then what they put on for the rest of the world. And so it's an interesting thing that I don't think you see really anywhere else. You don't get alignment and then false alignment. Like, what do you? I am lawful evil, but I make sure everybody believes I'm lawful good, and there's no place on a character sheet for that kind of stuff, because if you do, you just do, and it doesn't matter. But in this game, it is pretty important in the role-playing sense to understand that there's a lot of duality to humans. So any questions on nature and demeanor?
Yeah, so it's only when you satisfy nature that you get your willpower back, and demeanor is more of just a guide for role playing.
Yep.
All right. Well, my demeanor is definitely contrary, because I'm a punk.
Or rebel. That one.
Yeah,
That's not even
let
one.
me read
I don't think that's even one.
It should be. I thought I saw it
I
referenced
thought I saw
somewhere.
it before too, but now I don't see it.
Yeah, it's not in the list.
Which one was
Contrary
it?
is pretty. I'm gonna do contrary for demeanor. I got to figure out nature though, because there's, because punks are contrarians, but it's always covering up some sort of other thing. I just got to figure out what that is.
All right, and so moving on from that, then there's the factions. Oh no, sorry, wrong. Next thing is attributes. So these are pretty simple and pretty straightforward. I know that you guys have played multiple games of Mage the Ascension with me, but just to quickly kind of go over it, you've got basically strength, dexterity, and stamina as your physical attributes. Your social attributes are charisma, manipulation, and appearance. Mental attributes are perception, intelligence, and wits. Um, they pretty much all speak for themselves. So I won't go into kind of deeper into that. There is more detail inside of the Mage 20 book if you want to get into what exactly those mean. But the basis of it is if you have one dot in one of these attributes, you're kind of shitty. You're basically at the lower percentile of the human race when it comes to being able to perform a strength test, or how dexterous you are, or how much stamina you have. At 2 dots, you're about average. An intelligence of 2 is, a standard IQ, basically 100 to 115. If you are, appearance of 2, you look like like the normal people. You're not ugly, you're not good looking, you're just average. And so at as you start bumping up from that, you get to good, exceptional, and then basically at 5 dots you are top of your game. There is only a small percentage of humans in the world that can match you, and there are technically ways to go above 5, but only through magical means. So to start off with this, there are no restrictions to what you can pick for your physical, or how high you can go besides 5. 1 to 5 is your limit, but there's no restrictions on how you spend these. So you get choose 1 at 7 dots that you get to distribute, 1 at 5 dots that you get to distribute, and 1 at 3 dots that you get to distribute between physical, social, and mental. So for example, a lot of people, to make things really simple, would do, you get 1 dot automatically. You all, at the very least, you're at the lower. You can't have a 0 in strength or a 0 in dex. You can technically have a 0 in appearance, but that gets into merits, flaws, and other things that can cause you to have your appearance be at 0, which makes you like monstrous, basically. But a lot of people would do something like 3 in strength, 4 in dexterity, 3 in stamina. That gets you 7. And then you can do like 3 in charisma, 2 in manipulation, 3 in appearance. That gets you 5. And then 2 in intelligence, 2 in perception, 2 in wits. That gets you 3. And that's the base distribution that you kind of do: 2, 3, 2, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 1, 1. However, feel free to distribute that however you feel. So you can have 5 in strength by getting, putting 4 points, and then your 5th point can be 1 in dex, or having 2 in dex and then 1 in stamina, because that's what you feel your character is just super strong, but couldn't take a punch if he's got very, very high pain receptors and doesn't like running. Very heavy guy.
But 753?
753. And you can find the easy point distribution information in page 250. There's 753 for the attributes. Abilities will be 1395. Backgrounds will be 7, and we'll go through these as well as we're going to. So any questions on attributes? Anybody confused by anything? Just to let you know, perception is one of the most used attributes because it goes along with your perception and alertness and perception and awareness roll. So if you want to game the system, having very high perception is something that will make you have good dice rolls, because everybody's always needing to see what the fuck's going on.
I've done this a bunch of times. 753 is in addition to the starting dots that your character sheet has?
Correct. Yep. So you automatically start with 1 dot in something. So you can do 3, 3, 4 for 7 dots. You've distributed 7 by having 1 over.
Yeah, so you put an initial dot in each, and then you get those others on top.
Yep.
Yeah.
And all character sheets usually have that initial dot already filled in, representing that it is a permanent fixture on your character. Once again, only appearance can go down to 0. It's a very special circumstance. The exception that makes the rule.
That's weird because I was going to joke that as a punk, I should have an appearance of 0.
There is, I think there's a flaw for it. It basically gives you like 1 point.
No.
I'm not 100% on that. Anyways, so I think we can move on from there. That's pretty simple stuff there. The next one is also very much in line with this, where you have your abilities. So abilities are broken down into talents, skills, and knowledges. So talents are much more innate skills, or innate things that you can, abilities that you can do. Skills are more of your learned abilities through action. By physically doing something, usually a bunch of times you can get good at it. You can still get good at talents by being better or using that more, but it's kind of like this not as learned of a ability. And then knowledges, which is of course your knowledge that you have. So you get 13, 9, 5 for this. The max that you can go up to is 3 at this point. So you cannot have an alertness of 4 until you spend freebie points, and then you can say I've because you're specializing after that point. In order to specialize in something, they've added in a mechanic that later on you'll come back to these points here and say I want to add on a little bit. The way I kind of say it is that you get $15 and it costs $5 for your physical or for your attributes, $2 to add an ability. I believe it's $1 for backgrounds. Spheres are like 5 or 7. What freebie point costs? Spheres are $7. Arete is $4. Willpower is 1. Quiescence is 1 for 4 dots. And then you got merits and flaws that can change that as well. But basically, you go into the store and you buy, I want 3 dots and abilities, and you can distribute that however you want, which is different than experience, because experience, the more you have in something, the more expensive it gets. Freebie points is where you get to kind of go around that. When spending freebie points, I highly suggest spending freebie points on things that are higher in dot value. So buying something that is a 4 or a 5 is much better for you than buying a bunch of 1s, because they just, points wise, it just is way less quote unquote experience to get that 1 dot than it is to get a 5th dot in something. So at this point, 3 will be your maximum. You've got your talents, skills, and knowledges. Once again, the book does cover these more in depth as to what what alertness is, what art is, what athletics is, awareness, brawl. One thing I kind of want to point out, though, is that they did get rid of dodge in the 20th anniversary setup. In the 20th anniversary setup, they have athletics has taken over dodge, which makes a lot of sense. It makes athletics a little bit more useful, and you could still use it for like when people are running and stuff like that, and jumping, and athletics had its uses, but in general in combat you would never use athletics, whereas now it's a very important combat skill actually, which makes a lot of sense. If you're extremely athletic, you're likely to be super dodgy.
If a monk is using a quarterstaff, is that melee or martial arts?
That would be melee. Although I could see an argument for do, which is a special skill, or do. Sorry, do a deer. Anyways, but that is only if you were an Akashic Brotherhood. But yeah, in general, melee would be what you'd use for a staff. The one thing though that I do like about the storyteller system is that I could see you making an argument and saying I don't know how to use anything other than a staff and martial arts, but I'm not, if I picked up a sword, I wouldn't know what to do with it. So then you wouldn't have melee. But you could, and I could see arguments for, you know, tweaking of different things here and there if you feel that that is a thing about your character.
Quintessence is based on your avatar rating, not your arate level.
Correct. Yep. So your avatar is what the more powerful your avatar, the more likely that the more power you can store inside yourself.
And by avatar, that's the avatar background.
Yep, that's the avatar background. So
Okay.
that is the next thing that we'll be getting into. So we'll
Sorry,
actually.
got a little ahead.
Yep, not a problem because that's kind of where we're going next. Unless anybody has any questions on abilities.
And I just put my dots in. Actually, I do have a question. Since I am going to be a voodoo punk, if I am going to reference voodoo, what knowledge would you put that under? I'm guessing occult.
Occult, yeah.
But, okay, because I do want to kind of max that out a little bit, which I did.
Yep. The other thing you could also do is add in a knowledge of lore voodoo, and be, super specific, which means, and if you did lore voodoo, it wouldn't be like stuff that we just can read on Wikipedia. I would probably give you access to like, supernatural craziness that's going on with the voodoo world.
Yeah, probably lower difficulty, but more specific.
Right, yeah. That's kind of how I handle it. I can't remember how 20th Anniversary usually handles that. That's something I'll have to double check, but I don't think they have. I know that there is a version in the World of Darkness of one of the books, Vampire the Masquerade or something out there, that does talk about secondary abilities and how they lower the difficulty by 2 on stuff, because they're so specific. But I'm not 100% on that for Mage 20th Anniversary, so just to make a little notation there. Because we will be going by my rules, but, we always want to reference if we're stepping away from the standardized ruling. All right, so next thing will be backgrounds. So the main thing about backgrounds here is this kind of like makes up your character in a lot of like, what his wealth is, who his friends are, like not just friends, but your allies, the people, like I know the sheriff, I have a contact that's a hacker. An ally is a little bit different than a contact. Contacts should be somebody that has lots of information, but you're not really going to be calling to come and help you out, like a hacker buddy. Now, if you're inside of the digital web all the time, that might be a little bit different. You might have an ally that is a hacker because you hang out in a world that you can interact and do stuff with each other. They might also have allies can have information, but you don't really use them that way. That's if you're trying to get information on something and you're doing a role with or if you're doing a role for it, you would be using contacts. You could probably role play out stuff with your allies though. But let's go over really quick what your different backgrounds can be. And I'm going to try and give you just kind of a base idea if it's not something that's a standard thing. So allies, friends, that's pretty simple. Alternate identity, that's pretty simple. Arcane, otherwise known as cloaking. So this is your ability to just kind of have a mysterious ability for people to forget about you or not notice you. At like Arcane 5, it's very possible that you can go around and do a ton of stuff and even like trip and fall and smash your face into something and then like just get up and walk away and nobody will even notice. Nobody will care. Nobody will talk about that event happening and nobody will really remember you very much. And it's also, it can become a problem of like you can't really, unless you really make an impression on somebody, they're probably going to forget about you and what your name is and what your interactions that you've had with them. So it can be kind of a blessing and a curse. Then there's Avatar Ingenious. So Avatar we've been talking about before. The more powerful your avatar is, the more quiescence you can have, and the more quiescence you can spend per turn. If you have 1 dot in quiescence, you can only spend 1 dot per turn. Up to 3. Once you get up to 3 in quiescence or in avatar, that's the most you can spend per turn. At 4, you can just have a little bit more avatar or a little bit more base quiescence that's inside of you. In 5, you have a little bit more base quiescence that's inside of you. The more quiescence that you do kind of have too can kind of light you up a little bit differently too. Like, I would say over 5 is when you really start lighting up probably, but having 5 in an avatar, people that scan you with like entropy or entropy like fate type stuff or prime are gonna probably be like, you've got something big inside you. Then you've got backup, which we won't go into because that's a technocratic one. Blessing. Strange powers gave you an uncanny gift. And so that's one that's kind of an open. I think they give some examples, but you can kind of play around with that a little bit. So it can be a little bit more subjective. Then we have Chantry and Construct. So if you guys want to own a Chantry, either your Cabal that you guys are going to be forming at this point, you can use these points to justify getting it later in the game too. So it's not one of those things where it has to be something you have in your past. You can I've always allowed for backgrounds to be like, I want to be able to get everybody, one of us wants to have a Chantry at the beginning of the game, so we all bought a whole bunch of points in Chantry. Is it okay for us to have a Chantry? But we are given, we don't want it right away. We want to get it, the beginning of the story type thing. Somebody handed it to us or whatever to start out the story. My suggestion for this game is not to have any points in Chantry. Contacts, which is pretty self-explanatory. Cult, which is pretty self-explanatory.
Oh, is it? You can have a cult. 1 dot is 3 to 7 people. Although it looks like the mechanical benefit is you get to add dice to ritual castings with your cult's assistance.
Oh yeah, yep. Yeah, I mean, I guess that part isn't very self-explanatory. Let's see here. Then there's
Main.
What's that?
I think the next one is domain. It's spelled Demesne.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, basically domain, your personal inner dream space. Demesma, whatever. It's a magical dream space. Actually, I didn't even know that existed.
Is this like your mind library?